Welcome to the Numerical Tarot, a new tarot paradigm, an alternative to tradition, an axial system of archetypal crystallography, a trans-culturally anthropomorphized, life-biased binary influence calculator, a wisdom system, an archetype enhancer, with harmony of interpretation throughout. The content of all the videos in this series are excerpts, edits and brief summaries from the eBooks All Things Are Numbers and All Things Are Patterns, links below. For a more complete explanation of each idea, additional reading might be helpful. Hopefully the basic ideas come across enough to pique your interest in trying this alternative approach to tarot. Having made a case in favor of balance in our perceptions of life and consciousness, let's now give equal time to those who oppose my ideas, and examine the case that many people make in favor of imbalance and adopting a lopsided perspective that is biased toward the subconscious and unconscious side of consciousness. As humans perceiving our world, our minds span a spectrum from conscious to unconscious. But our physical form represents an unavoidable bias toward one end of this spectrum, the end that deals with manifestation. Thus, as manifest beings, we have a natural bias toward the conscious. In fact, in many cases, people are so locked into this bias that it becomes their only way of thinking. Observing the natural bias that many of us have toward the conscious, survivalistic aspects of life, and further observing how locked into this mode of thinking many of us become. Books on spirituality attempt to pull us away from this bias and bring us closer to this neglected or forgotten realm, the subconscious and unconscious of consciousness. This is also the purpose of most religious philosophies, religion meaning re plus lagar, to bind, tie us back to this realm. Unfortunately, what many of these spiritual philosophies gloss over is just how addictive their spiritual ideas can be to those who have an inbred tendency toward addiction. For an addict to replace one addiction with another is not uncommon. If we look around, we can see that a lot of people are addictive in one way or another. For some it is drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling or food. For others it manifests in their psychological need to cling to something they can believe in. This kind of replacement of one addiction with another is considered unhealthy. It is for this reason that the Numerical Tarot is devoted to balance in its analysis and use of consciousness. The purpose of this attempt at balance is not to vilify spirituality in favor of the conscious realm, but to warn against this shifting of addiction from one realm to another. But we are here to give equal time to those who do not seek balance, but prefer to pull people locked into their conscious mind fully over to that other realm. Often with a goal of leaving their former life behind. Completely. In favor of these other ways of thinking. And oftentimes causing people to vilifying their old ways as a prison they have escaped from. So how do proponents of such bias perceive the conscious realm and how do they suggest changing? Well, unfortunately, many assume the worst of their subjects, that they are materialistic, logical, rational and lacking imagination, focused on details and missing the big picture and collecting dots but never connecting them. Okay, but once we have identified the condition of our patient, we need to establish ways with which we can communicate the nature of this other realm. Toward this goal, we could try inventing a theoretical, metaphorical, allegorical, analogical map of consciousness for them to use, in order to show them where on that map they are, and where on that map they may find this other realm. How about that? In the study of tarot and consciousness being presented in these videos, we have many such charts and diagrams or maps of consciousness that attempt to visually represent the terrain of consciousness. In fact, the very construction of the Numerical Tarot deck rests upon these many inventions. In the video devoted to the spine of tarot, video number 12, two realms of consciousness are clearly defined by the major icons of the Numerical Tarot deck. Also in the video about the ancient Egyptian hallway of initiation, video number 13. And in video numbers 8, 9 and 10 this binary relationship is expanded to include the minor suits. While the binary influence calculator, and dream analysis calculator, and the kintagrams they lead us to, give us a workable device for determining exactly where we are, in our state of consciousness at any given moment in time. Unlike most tarot decks, which do not organize the cards in a binary fashion where one suit describes one form of consciousness and a corresponding suit can then describe its opposite, the Numerical Tarot is well equipped to describe to someone both realms of consciousness. Unfortunately, the popularity of the Numerical Tarot is minimal, because it does not commit this act of assuming the worst about everyone. In that way, the numerical tarot fails, in that it does not assume everyone who looks at it to be locked into their conscious, survivalistic ways, and in great need to be pushed or dragged into their subconscious or unconscious mind. Thus, it will be observed how the ideas in this study are devoted more toward the neutral, unbiased mapping of consciousness in all its binary glory, and not the elevating of one side of consciousness over another as naturally superior to the other. The ideas in this study actually assume that everyone is capable of a balanced perspective, once they understand the terrain, and that neither realm alone is superior to the other, nor should it ever become the exclusive habitat of any mind, to the vilification of the other. An unpopular view, yes. In this way, the numerical tarot is indeed the nail that sticks up. In the numerical tarot, the suit that is identified as addition, diamond or coin, which would correspond in the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot to the suit of pentacles, is the suit that would probably best describe the person who is locked into their positive, conscious, survivalistic, materialistic, action-oriented ways. Thus, as an arbitrary exercise, we could establish this as a home base, and from there examine how the other suits that oppose this one, in various binary ways, describe other realms that this pentacle person might be missing. There are two different ways we can oppose the suit of addition, diamond or coin, or pentacles, in order to visit the realm of the subconscious or unconscious mind. One is to look at the emotional equivalent of every action we find among our home suit of addition, diamond or coin, i.e. the qualitative versus the quantitative, found within the suit of multiplication, heart or cup. The other is to look at the negative path that opposes the positive path described by addition, diamond or coin, which would be the path of subtraction, club or stave. However, instead of doing that, let's begin by examining that positive-negative split, using the major icons of the numerical tarot, and their roughly equivalent representations in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Position 1. The Jinni versus the Jinx. Or, the Magician versus the Wheel of Fate. The lesson to be taught here is to educate our pentacle person, locked into the positive realm as they are, about the nature of fate versus will. In our waking minds we tend to think that force of will can make things so. Then, the wheel of fate turns. Thus, to be more into our negative side, we need to be more random and fatalistic in accepting whatever fate is coming our way. We need to be more of a naive fool. Don't think. Have no purpose in mind. Don't try to make things happen, just let them happen. Any way the wind blows. The other realm speaks the language of random. Thus shuffling is how cards are arranged. So, turn off your mind. And, just be. Position 2. The Muse versus the Haunt. Or, no equivalent in a traditional deck, versus High Priestess, if moved to the negative path. A muse gives our pentacle person direction, thus reaffirming their notion that force of will can blaze a trail. Then, the fog rolls in and we lose our way. Thus, to be more into our negative side, we would want to be more spontaneous. Take random fate, and apply no direction to it. Let those random feelings wander and get lost. Explore. Put on a blindfold, and only see what's in the mind. The other realm has no eyes, and thus does not focus on a goal or path. Move toward the foggy depths of the mystical. Be more ambiguous. Or don't move at all. A mind that moves is a mind perceiving illusion. So, close your eyes. And, relax and float downstream. Position 3. The Beauty versus the Beast. Or, the Empress versus the Hanged Man. The beauty seeks impossible perfection, proportion and symmetry. Then, we find a flaw. The primitive lives with nature in all its imperfect ways. To those who live with nature, nature is perfect just the way it is. In seeking perfection, the pentacle person is afraid to get their hands dirty. Our other mind is not so afraid. Crude, primitive expressions and sloppy results are par for a course that begins with randomness and blind exploration. The pentacle person seeks to rise above the wild brutish ways of nature. To be more negative, the pentacle person should paint with a broader brush, like palm prints on a cave wall. Be wild, like an animal. To be more negative, build the calluses of a musician. Live the ascetic life. So, be sloppy, careless, and get your hands dirty. Position 4. The Hero versus the Villain. Or, the Emperor versus Death. The strong think that they can build permanent structures that will never change. Then, death comes along and changes everything. The lesson here is to not invest so much in tangible things and ideas of permanence. The building of great things tends toward the building of great egos. This is the card of the ego that must be destroyed. The other realm has no ego. So, the villain destroys our ego against our will. Or, the catalyst reforms us with our will and permission. The pentacle person tries to define things, and develops strong opinions about the way things are, or should be. They bully others into agreeing. To be more into the negative realm, we need to tear down this wall. Be flexible. Let your mind be bent. So, go with your gut. And burn all textbooks of learning. Position 5. The wizard versus the witch. Or, the Hierophant versus temperance. People locked into their positive conscious side are often obsessed with control and the controlling of everything around them. They manipulate and dominate like a dictator. Then, something goes wrong. Something doesn't fit, and they have a fit. Thus, like the idea of randomness found at the beginning of this path, the lesson here is to take our hands off the wheel and loose control. Our other mind is an eccentric maverick, so shake things up. Don't be rational. Break the rules. Cause trouble. Be a disruptive influence. Go the other way, just to see where it goes. Zig, when the others zag. Be different. Have an adventure. So, let the force be with you. And only do what's necessary or essential. Position 6. The angel versus the devil. Or, the lovers versus the devil. Once our strong-willed egos have manipulated control over things and created the illusion of permanence, we tend to hang on to those things for dear life. Then, they get taken away. We cherish our permanent things, and can't live without them. We cling to them like lovers in a passionate embrace. This is where we develop the addictions and dependencies so many spiritual philosophies work at breaking. Our other mind has no such addictions to things like manifest existence, things, or life. So to be more in the negative, we must let go. Detach. View addictions as the devil and move away. Or, be like the devil and pervert our minds away from those positive, conscious, materialistic things we cling to. All those things we see as good, because of how they enhance and maintain our life and existence, must be trashed. Our other mind is a detached observer with no material possessions. So to be more negative, live in poverty. Clinging to the positive also fosters a sense of certainty, the equidistant relative of permanence. To be more in the negative, we need to embrace uncertainty in our uncertain future. Forget the past. We need to play in the future. So let go, and play. Have a bonfire of the vanities. Position 7. The saint versus the sadist. Or, the chariot versus the tower. The tangible things we cling to become idolized, sanctified and deified. We put them on an altar, inside a church, mosque or temple and worship them as the unchanging things and beliefs that will give us permanent life and happiness. Then, an iconoclast comes along and topples everything like a crumbling tower. On the positive side, our body is our temple. We master our conscious, waking life of existence by mastering the opposites that affect us. We build the walls of our ego and enclose ourselves in the skin of body armor. But our other mind has no body or skin, so to be more into the negative, those idolized fetishes and protective coverings need to go. Only by dissolving our skin can we connect to the negativity of the other side. So, touch nothing with nothing. Have no body. Build no churches. Construct no altars. Meditate until all sense of existence and physical senses are gone. Reality is a dream. No residence. No body. No meaning. Stop making sense. Be illusory. Disconnect from reality. In the dark, we are all the same. So disconnect from everything. Connect to nothingness. Leave the reality of your body in existence behind. Position 8. The Lumina versus the Wraith. Or, strength versus the star. Once the force of our will has created permanent idols we can cling to, the pentacle person develops bias and bigotry toward things outside their illuminated sphere. Then, the lights go out. On the positive side, with the help of the aforementioned addictions, the enthusiasm of the pentacle person snowballs, or mushrooms. Lots of time and energy is put toward fanatical perceptions of lofty goals that can be reached. Our other mind has no goals. On the negative side, our other mind is relaxed. On the negative side, our energy goes with the flow, fluctuating this way and that, with the random current. The lights are turned down low, or off, and darkness is our friend. like its equidistant relative, where we closed our eyes. They are still closed, and we are now leaving our body. We are so relaxed we are but one step away from knowing actual death, which would make us the most balanced we can be. That is, while still remaining alive. So, be a ghost. Purge all life fluids and die. Metaphorically speaking. See more by not looking. Narrow vision to nothing. Wash away existence. Position 9. The God versus the Ghoul. Or, the Hermit versus the Moon. The Pentacle person lives on a hamster wheel. Goals are set. Goals are met. New goals are set. Knowledge is acquired. Encyclopedias are filled. Like a sphere becoming the beginning point of an endless continuation of manifest utterances, the Pentacle person goes around and around in an endless attempt to maintain order out of chaos. Then, we die. When we die, all that order returns to the chaos. Our other mind lives in the chaos. Like the randomness of its equidistant partner, to be more negative, we need to embrace the chaos. Learn to live with the chaos. Learn how to use the chaos. If death is our fate, learn the art of dying. The negative side is dark and silent. Enjoy the silence. Empty the mind. So, go crazy. And go with the wind. In order for this Egyptian hallway of initiation chart to make any sense, we have to alter the appearance of the major icons from that of tradition. That is why this approach to tarot is presented as an alternative. The fact that most people will more than likely refuse to make such alterations from that of tradition means that the beauty of this approach will never be found. But, even without altering the form of tradition, the number of places where this pattern makes sense makes traditional decks at least a bit useful in illustrating these concepts. For example, most traditionalists would probably agree that 1. The magician is deliberate, with a calculating mind, and the wheel is random. 4. The emperor is stable and unchanging, and death is changing. 6. The lovers are committed and certain, and the devil is uncertain. 9. The hermit is complete and ordered, and the moon is chaotic, or loony. Less precise. 2. If we take the high priestess as a Shekinah, she is clear, and if more people would illustrate justice with her blindfold on, she could represent ambiguity. 3. The beauty of the Empress is nature tamed, while the hanged man is a wild beast. 7. The chariot's mastery of opposites establishes a sense of reality, while the lightning-struck tower reminds us of the illusory nature of our constructs of reality. Thus, the reality-bound pentacle person falls to the left side of this Egyptian hallway diagram, dealing with the superficially apparent unchanging, certain nature of matter, the tame, tangible nature of reality, the clear, consistent nature of energy, and the calculated, ordered nature of totality. While their other mind falls to the right side of this diagram, reminding us of the random, chaotic nature of totality, the ambiguous, fluctuating nature of energy, the wild, illusory nature of reality, and the changing, uncertain nature of matter, as it deals with more archetypally conceptual notions like frame, flow, form, force, and function. Nothing is certain, that's for sure. 6. The only constant is change. 4. Reality is a dream. 7. See more by not looking. 2. These oxymorons remind us of how the two worlds of pentacle person and their other mind merge and blend together to create a hybrid perception of the universe, and our place in it. So, even though this video had intentions of being unbalanced, in order to make a point about another realm, one look at this map of consciousness leads inevitably to thoughts of how these two worlds work together. What can I say? Balance is my bias. 8. So, to summarize, if we want to move away from our conscious, preconscious, waking, living, surviving self of tangible things that we cling to for life, we should 1. Be more of a random fool. 2. Be more spontaneous and ambiguous. 3. Be sloppy and wild. 4. Be open to change. 5. Let go of control. 6. Let go of cherished people, places, and things. 7. Meditate. 8. Relax. 9. Be silent. Empty our mind. With knowledge of this dynamic in mind, we could now set about the task, familiar to so many spiritual philosophies, of making the pentacle people we know feel inferior for missing this supposedly superior path. Thus, if we wanted to ridicule or pity the pentacle person for not getting it, we would lament 1. How predictable and deliberate they are, like the willful-minded magician or jinni, rather than random, like the mercurial wheel of fate or jinx. 2. We would wince at how obvious and clear they are, like an inspiring muse, rather than ambiguous and blind, like the mysterious high priestess or haunt. 3. We would pity them for their pursuit of perfection and refinement, like the beautiful Empress or beauty, rather than wild earthiness like the slovenly hanged man or beast. 4. We would laugh at their attempts to define and determine the unchanging nature of things, like the constructive emperor or hero, rather than progressively instigating change, like destructive death or villain. 5. We would cringe at their controlled use of logic and reason, and adherence to rules, like the authoritative hierophant, rather than being irrational and illogical without rules, like the uncontrolled, recalcitrant witch. 6. We would bemoan their misguided thoughts of certainty, like marrying lovers looking to the future, rather than embracing the uncertainty of the dubious devil. 7. We would groan at pursuits of tangible success, like the victorious chariot, rather than yielding to the illusory nature of the leveled ego of the fallen tower. 8. We would be shocked by their unbridled enthusiasm, like the consistently energetic lumina, suggesting instead a relaxed, fluctuating purge of energy, like the subdued star. 9. We would ridicule their attempts to explain things in orderly ways, like the knowledgeable hermit, rather than embracing the lunacy of chaos, like the empty night of the moon. Now let's look to the minor suits, to see how we can further break down the differences between our pentacle person, locked into materialism and empiricism, and our other mind from the other side. In these comparisons, we will be contrasting between the suit of addition, diamond or coin, or pentacles, and the suit of multiplication, heart or cup, as that suit describes the qualitative or right-brained side of our perceptions. Here we have an image to use in visualizing the difference between quantitative left-brained thinking and qualitative right-brained thinking, or conscious thought versus unconscious thought. Notice that the sideways pyramid shape being used to represent the mind of a brain has its own corpus callosum type of connector. People might fear or loathe their opposite mind, but as long as that connection is there, they will never completely sever their tether to each other. Thus, even the most fixed and finite mind will occasionally find itself being influenced by the fluid and flexible ways of its dreaded opposite, while the fluid and flexible mind will occasionally look for fixed and finite ways to express itself publicly to others, with language, and tangible, finite forms of art. One side is about speculation. The other side is about realization. 1. The fast beginning versus the nascent state. To begin with, a pentacle person begins, whereas our other mind just is. A pentacle person breaks things down into beginning, middle and end, or birth, life and death. But for our other mind, there is no beginning, middle or end, only eternal presence, unity and infinite expanse. So, to be more qualitative, just be here, now. 2. The fluent action versus the open relationship. The pentacle person is ruled by time and motion. They move their physical existence from place to place, based on these measured notions. But for our other mind there is no time or motion, only relativistic relationships between destinations. The pentacle person walks a road of linear direction. Our other mind navigates a web of relative distances. So, to be more qualitative, understand the relative relationships of the web. No measuring, no sequence. Lose track of linear time. 3. The refined creation versus the perfect bond. The pentacle person deals with actual, corporeal things that are created and can be bumped into. Things that can be touched or real. But for our other mind, reality is more about the bond that is made between the aforementioned relationships. Life is about the reality we create in our minds. So, to be more qualitative, recognize the bond of connectedness between things which exists beneath the tangible surfaces of reality. Use the connections of a perfect bond to establish a firm foundation. 4. The ameliorate event versus the stable foundation. The pentacle person has a proclivity to build upon the existence they have, and to try and make it bigger and better. The pentacle person builds, using the aforementioned things of reality. But our other mind will not allow us to build until we have established a firm and stable foundation. So, to be more qualitative, acknowledge the foundation before building. Know the archetypal armature of the web before throwing the clay. Study the blank canvas before dipping the brush. 5. The controlled middle versus the settled union. The pentacle person has to manipulate physical objects, our conscious minds, in order to negotiate life-affirming contracts and maintain order. Like an alchemist mixing literal quantities, opposites are brought together about a crystalline middle. To the Pentacle person, it's about mastering opposites. But our other mind is more like the philosophical alchemist, blending opposites into a holistic, amorphous union. So, to be more qualitative, stir opposites together into an integrated whole. Eliminate opposites. Be gray. 6. The increasing evolution versus the familiar environment. The Pentacle person tends to accumulate things, and depend upon them to provide certainty about the future. For many, wealth equals health. But our other mind is more interested in the aforementioned relationships and bonds, and the foundations they provide, making things more about the nurturing of what has been established. Wealth equals a supportive environment. The equidistant foundation supports and nurtures in proportion to its strength. So, to be more qualitative, establish a nurturing environment, get involved. Share. 7. The credible realization versus the pure synthesis. The Pentacle person focuses on the successful realization of manifestation. Meaning and purpose are dependent upon the success of planted seeds. Things that are realized add to a sense of reality. But our other mind comes from the other side, the side of fantasy. Like the bonds of its equidistant relative, our other mind is more about the synthesis of thought that accompanies tangible success. Seeing the interconnectedness of things as a whole. Imagining how things could fit as a unified entity. So, to be more qualitative, be more imaginative. Live in a fantasy world of possible connections. 8. The cumulative discharge versus the broad perspective. The Pentacle person lives for the payoff of the aforementioned success of realizations. Like sexual orgasm, the charge that one gets from success is a measure of that measured process of success. Like its equidistant partner, this charge motivates ameliorate progress forward and upward. But, also like the equidistant partner, our other mind is more about the broadened perspective that accompanies this explosive radiating end. So, to be more qualitative, keep a broad perspective. A broad perspective aids in the finding and making of the aforementioned connections. So, acknowledge the space displaced. 9. The affirmative end versus the ordered infinity. The Pentacle person is goal-oriented. Like the aforementioned accumulative nature, and the aforementioned dependence upon success, they accumulate goals, and the conscious knowable knowledge that they represent. Each goal that is met becomes the starting point of a new climb to success. A finite end wraps things up with neat little bow. But to our other mind, these goals are not so much about the tangible success that leads to knowledge, but more about the holistic ordering of infinity into patterns. So, to be more qualitative, study the patterns more than the things. As mentioned previously, balance is my bias. So, even though this video is supposed to be intentionally lopsided, in order to reveal to us the realm inhabited by our other mind, acknowledgement of opposites, and particularly their interdependence upon each other in the mapping of consciousness, is inevitable. So, to summarize, if we want to move away from our conscious, preconscious, waking, living, surviving self of tangible things that make life real, we should 1. Just be here now. 2. Harmonize. 3. Bond. 4. Empower. 5. Blend. 6. Nurture. 7. Imagine. 8. Open up. 9. Embrace orderly patterns. If we want to ridicule or pity the Pentacle person who doesn't get it, 1. We would cringe at their attempts to know how this all began, or how it will end. 2. We would pity their linear thinking. 7. We would laugh at their sense that anything is real. 6. We would bemoan their materialistic grip on things rather than emotional bonds. As mentioned earlier, in illustrating these ideas, a traditional deck might fall short. But even in a deck like the Rider-Waite-Smith, some of these ideas come across rather well. The Two of Pentacles is about motion, while the Two of Cups is about relative distance. The Three of Pentacles is about sculpting a corporeal body, the walls of a church, while the Three of Cups is about an invisible bond of love. The Six of Pentacles shows material wealth being given, while the Six of Cups shows emotional wealth being given. The Seven of Pentacles is about the successful growth of a seed into a ripened plant, while the Seven of Cups is more about the invisible synthesis that imagined and visualized that success, the fantasized reality of the mind. Add these ideas to the ones just covered with the major icons, and the Pentacle person should be well on their way to finding the other side of life, where their other mind may be found. The observant viewer might have noticed how all the ideas in the last progression were all positive-sounding concepts that may have even seemed to lead to a state of enlightenment. Whereas, the progression that utilized positive and negative major icons seemed to lead to a darker end that brought us about as close to actual death as a still-living entity could possibly get. This realization thus leads us to further examine the qualitative aspects of that darker path, as seen in the minor suit of division, spade or sword. For those who have studied the underlying structure of the numerical tarot, it is known that for every major icon there are 2 rows of minor suits that repeat the same ideas with a more specific quantitative to qualitative breakdown of ideas. Thus, the suits of subtraction, club or stave, or wand, and division, spade or sword, repeat the ideas found within the negative progression of major icons, what would be equivalent to cards 10 through 18 in a more traditional deck like Rider-Waite-Smith. Thus, in order to examine the qualitative nature of this negative path, it will be helpful to compare and contrast the positive ideas just presented in the suit of multiplication, heart or cup, which led to enlightenment, with the ideas held by the suit of division, spade or sword in its path to something this study of consciousness calls endarkenment. 1. The nascent state versus the dormant state. Enlightenment says be nascent, as in coming into being, full of potential. Endarkenment says to not be at all. Be quiet and dormant. Don't exist. Don't be. Don't think. Abstinence purifies the mind. 2. The open relationship versus the closed relationship. Enlightenment says to be open to influences and observe the obvious. Endarkenment says to close the eyes and shut out the clutter of existence. See more by not looking. 3. The perfect bond versus the imperfect bond. Enlightenment says bond with nature and existence. Endarkenment says to break that bond with existence, in order to not exist. The body is just an illusory shell. Sacrifice the body. 4. The stable foundation versus the unstable foundation. Enlightenment says establish a foundation for existence to build. Endarkenment says be vulnerable, like a person who is asleep. Embrace endless changes. Be unattached and homeless. 5. The settled union versus the unsettled union. Enlightenment says unify the parts with temperance, i.e. alchemistic coagula. Endarkenment says agitate the parts to disintegration, i.e. alchemistic solve. 6. The familiar environment versus the unfamiliar environment. Enlightenment says establish an augmenting rhythm of cycles that nurture each other. Endarkenment says detach, let go of the familiar, and embrace the uncertainty of the darkness ahead. 7. The pure synthesis versus the impure synthesis. Enlightenment says connect to the light and see everything as one connected entity. Endarkenment says connect to the dark and see nothingness as one continuum of infinite connectedness, to nothing. 8. The broad perspective versus the narrow perspective. Enlightenment says a broad perspective takes in more light, and becomes enlightened. Endarkenment says a narrow perspective is less influenced by existence and more focused on less and less. Purge existence. Purify the mind. 9. The ordered infinity versus the chaotic infinity. Enlightenment says being one with the all-knowing of everything is divine. Endarkenment says having no mind is divine. A mind that is completely empty is divine. Don't fear the dark. By comparing the qualities of the suit of addition, diamond or coin, or pentacles, in both positive and negative ways, as well as quantitative and qualitative ways, we have covered a lot of ground, and in a somewhat brief and sketchy way. But that's okay. Because being brief and sketchy is good, as it is itself one of the many ways of thinking and approaching life that is foreign to the pentacle person. But in being sketchy, we have only scratched the surface of important qualities that are to be found in the subconscious, unconscious, or qualitative realm of our other mind. People who argue in favor of approaching life and tarot with a lopsided view toward this qualitative realm could undoubtedly add a lot more to this analysis. But that's not the point. The point of this video was not to cover everything, but only to show how the construction of the numerical tarot addresses both the conscious, preconscious, subconscious and unconscious realms of both existence and non-existence, equally. The point was to show how every pentacle-born action we commit has a corresponding cup-born feeling or emotion that comes from the realm of the mysterious or qualitative realm of our subconscious and unconscious. Likewise, for every life, or ego-preserving action and emotion, there is an opposite life, or ego-ending action and emotion in the suits of subtraction, club or stave, or wands, and division, spade or sword. In the numerical tarot, no card stands alone. Build an ego, or destroy an ego. Commit tangible, conscious acts upon reality, or contemplate feelings, emotions and patterns of fantasy. Break things down into beginning, middle and end, or unite them into a holistic unity of bond, union and synthesis. The numerical tarot is a tool for knowing where we are, when fluctuating and or modulating between these positive and negative states, quantitative and qualitative perceptions, provocative and evocative approaches, attached and detached viewpoints or active and passive phases of development. I don't know of any other tarot deck that is laid out this way, and is thus capable of such a full and complete vocabulary for describing our cycles of life and death, existence and non-existence, our conscious and unconscious, and everything in between. By mapping these various states, perceptions, approaches, viewpoints and phases of development with a tool like the kintagrams, we completely cover all of humanity in a single deck of cards that we can hold in our hands. Once we know where we are, on a map, or in the case of kintagrams, a grid, of consciousness, we can decide whether to pursue balance or not. As stated at the beginning of this video, it is not the goal of this study of tarot and consciousness to draw anyone out of their conscious mind and bombard them with ideas born exclusively from the subconscious and unconscious realm, while working under the assumption that that is what everyone who watches this video needs. This study of tarot and consciousness decides instead to assume the best of people, and assumes that once someone knows where they are, on a map of consciousness, they will move to whatever side is appropriate for any given situation. And then, if they desire the most transformative experience possible, they will balance out one experience with its opposite so that they don't get stuck thinking only one way, and subsequently talking down to others, who, by comparison, they view as stuck in an opposite, inferior realm. Don't do that. Stay balanced. Okay, that's enough for this video. If you've watched every minute of all 20 of these past videos, you should have a pretty good idea of what the numerical tarot is about, how it works, and how it's different from more traditional forms of tarot out there. I hope you give it a try. These videos cover a lot of what is in the ebook All Things Are Numbers. But they don't cover 100%. There are a few interesting progressions and other uses of the number line that are worth reading about. And, in the book, there are pages worth of possible interpretations for each card, upright and reversed, which is good to have available as a resource. Those pages are on the website too. But someday the website will go away, when I go away. So you might want to buy the ebook for future reference. In some ways these videos explain my ideas better than I did in the ebook. Maybe someday I'll go back and improve the book. Or maybe a publisher will take some interest in publishing a printed book, and we can spruce everything up for that version. Until then, this is my best shot at getting this information out there. Thanks for watching. And as always, links to those ebooks, decks and merchandise below. And, seriously, if anyone is interested in drawing a deck based on this system of organization, don't hesitate to contact me for a collaboration.